Welcome back to the deep dive. Um, there is a very specific kind of anxiety that comes with standardized testing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's distinct from just general nervousness. It's this lurking suspicion that the whole thing is basically a rigged casino game.
Like the gambler's fallacy applied to linguistics?
Exactly. It's
Right.
that feeling where you could be completely fluent in English. You could be watching movies without subtitles, maybe even working in an English-speaking office.
Right.
But you walk into that exam center and you just feel like you're rolling the dice.
You are. Or you feel like you are.
You're hoping the examiner had a good breakfast. You're praying the reading passage isn't about, I don't know, the life cycle of 17th century fungi or something equally obscure.
Yeah, it is a incredibly common feeling, that sense that your score depends heavily on luck rather than your actual ability.
Right. But today, we are effectively staging an intervention for that mindset. We've got a stack of notes here from a really interesting source called the IELTS Roadmap. And the core argument is fascinating because it basically says, if you are relying on luck, you have already failed.
Stop buying a lottery ticket and start building a strategy.
Exactly.
It really deconstructs that fear you were talking about. The roadmap argues that the IELTS isn't a test of how native you sound or how lucky you get with the topics. It is purely a test of strategy.
It takes the mysticism right out of it.
It does. The argument is that you don't need to be a linguistic genius. You need to be a strategic operator.
A strategic operator. I like that a lot. So our mission today is to unpack this roadmap for you.
Let's do it.
It breaks down the path to success into 10 specific strategic pillars. We're talking the whole ecosystem: speaking, listening, reading, writing.
And the best part is that it claims these are entirely beginner-friendly. So even if you are starting from absolutely zero, there is a clear path forward here.
And if we want to give this a theme before we get into the weeds, it is really about consistency versus cramming.
Yes. The source makes it abundantly clear that you cannot simply shove this information into your brain the night before. This is entirely about building a daily habit.
So let's get right into it. The roadmap starts with something that sounds, honestly, incredibly basic. Almost patronizingly so.
Pillar 1.
Right. Pillar 1, know the test format.
It sounds basic, but you would be shocked at how many people fail right here on day 1.
But isn't that just reading the instructions? Like knowing there are 4 sections and that's it?
It is much deeper than that. The roadmap frames this around the concept of cognitive load.
Okay, break that down for us.
Think about your brain as a computer, right?
Yeah.
With a limited amount of RAM. If you walk into that exam room and you have to spend even 10% of your processing power figuring out if you need to tick a box, circle a letter, or write a whole word.
That's 10% less brain power you have available for vocabulary and grammar.
Precisely. You're burning precious energy on logistics instead of linguistics. The roadmap says, stop wasting time guessing.
So by the time you sit in that chair, the format should be completely boring to you.
Boring is the goal. You should know the timing of every single section down to the exact minute. You should know that in the listening section, for example, you only hear the recording once.
Wait, really? Just once?
Just once. If you don't know that and you're sitting there waiting for a replay that is never going to come, you've lost before you even started.
Wow. Okay, that actually leads perfectly into Pillar 7, which I think is basically the practical application of Pillar 1. The source is very specific here. Practice with real IELTS materials.
Yes. Official materials.
Now, I want to play devil's advocate for a second. English is English, right? Why can't I just practice by reading a magazine or doing some generic grammar workbook I found at the library?
Because the IELTS has a very specific voice. It is a standardized test, which means it is meticulously constructed by psychometricians.
Right.
They design questions in a specific way. They use what are called distractors.
Distractors. That sounds slightly malicious. Give me an example of what a distractor looks like in the wild.
It's not malicious, but it is tricky. Okay, so imagine a listening test. A generic English exercise might just ask, what time is the train?
Okay.
And the audio says, it's at 5 p.m. Easy. You write down 5 p.m. and you're done. In the IELTS, the audio will say something like, well, the train was scheduled for 5 p.m., but due to a signal failure, it won't arrive until 1/4 past.
Ah, I see. They bait you.
Exactly. If you aren't used to that specific turn-taking logic where they hand you an answer and then immediately retract or modify it, you will instinctively write down 5 p.m. and get it wrong. You have to calibrate your radar to that specific frequency.
And no amount of reading a random blog post or listening to the radio prepares you for that specific trap.
Not at all. The roadmap insists on official sample papers because they are the only ones that accurately simulate that level of nuance. It explicitly highlights that nothing beats the real thing when it comes to question style and timing.
Okay, so we've mapped the terrain. We know exactly where the landmines are. Now let's talk about the actual training regimen.
The input.
Right. Pillar 2 is listen actively every day. I really highlighted the word actively because I think most people assume listening is a passive activity.
Right, you put a podcast on while you fold laundry or commute.
Exactly. And the roadmap says that is fine for maintenance, but it is completely useless for actual improvement. Active listening in this context is a workout.
It lists 3 dimensions to focus on meaning, intonation, and pace.
Let's break those down. Meaning is obvious. Do I actually understand the words? But why are we focusing on intonation?
Because in English, intonation often carries the meaning that the words themselves don't.
Right.
Sarcasm, doubt, certainty, these are flagged by pitch, not just vocabulary. If you miss the intonation, you might think a speaker is enthusiastically agreeing when they are actually being highly skeptical.
Like saying, oh, really? Versus, oh, really?
Exactly. Totally different meanings based entirely on how you sing the words. And then there is pace. That is all about processing speed. Yeah. The roadmap suggests a technique where you start with slower content, maybe news designed for learners, and gradually ramp it up.
Like progressive overload in the gym.
That's the perfect analogy. If you walk into the gym and try to bench press 200 pounds on day 1, you'll crush yourself. Same with language. If you jump straight into a fast-paced, overlapping debate on CNN, you'll drown.
You have to start slow.
Start slow, train your ear to catch every single detail, and then increase the speed. The source also mentions using YouTube, which is great because you can actually see the mouth movements.
Which helps a lot with speaking, which we'll get to. But before we do, we have to touch on reading, pillar 4.
Read every day.
Again, sounds super generic. But the nuance the source adds here is, don't just read IELTS passages.
Right, because if you only read test materials, you will get bored to tears, and your brain just checks out. The roadmap suggests blogs, articles, stories, anything that actually keeps you engaged.
But the technical skill it emphasizes, and I found this critical, is scanning.
Yes. Scanning is huge.
Something I've always found difficult to explain to people. Scanning isn't just reading fast, is it?
No, scanning is essentially the art of ignoring information. That is the really hard part.
Ignoring it.
We are taught in school to read every single word from left to right, top to bottom. But in the IELTS, you absolutely do not have time for that. You are fighting the clock.
Right.
Scanning is the ability to look at a massive wall of text and find the date in 1994, or the word photosynthesis, without actually reading any of the sentences around it.
It's a hunter-gatherer mindset. You're hunting for a specific berry. You aren't there to admire the forest.
That is a brilliant way to put it. You are extracting data, not appreciating literature. The roadmap emphasizes that you need to be able to switch modes. When you're reading a blog for fun, read for pleasure. When you're practicing for the test, practice the hunt.
Okay, so we've covered the input, the stuff going into your brain.
Yeah.
Now we have to talk about the output, the stuff coming out. And this is usually where the fear really sets in for people.
Pillar 3, speak daily, don't be shy.
Right. Don't be shy is incredibly easy to write in a roadmap, but it is incredibly hard to actually do in real life.
It is.
The roadmap actually acknowledges this fear factor. It says beginners are absolutely terrified of looking stupid. So it suggests a strategy that, frankly, might make you look a little insane to your roommates.
You mean the talk to yourself advice?
Yes. Talk to yourself.
I will defend this strategy to the death. I really will.
Why? It feels so unnatural to just babble to an empty room.
Because the biggest hurdle in speaking isn't your vocabulary. It is the physical connection between your brain and your mouth. It is literal muscle memory.
Oh, interesting.
If you only speak when you have a dedicated conversation partner, you might speak for what, 20 minutes a week?
Yeah, maybe.
That is nowhere near enough time to build the neural pathways. When you talk to yourself narrating your breakfast, arguing with a ghost in the shower, you completely remove the social pressure.
You can't be embarrassed if no one is listening.
Exactly. It creates a psychologically safe environment for you to fail. You can stumble over a word 5 times, try 3 different verb tenses, and nobody is there to judge you. The roadmap also heavily pushes the 1-minute rule here.
I love this part. Even 1 minute a day makes a difference.
It is the atomic habits approach to language. If you tell yourself, I need to practice speaking for an entire hour today, you will procrastinate.
Every time.
But if you say, I'm just going to talk out loud for 1 minute while I wait for the kettle to boil, you will actually do it. And doing it keeps those neural pathways clear.
But here's the catch, and I think this is a major one. If I'm just babbling to myself in the shower, how do I know if I'm actually making mistakes? I could be reinforcing terrible grammar for months.
Which brings us directly to Pillar 8 record and evaluate your speaking.
This is the pill nobody wants to swallow. Listening to your own voice is excruciating.
It truly is.
I do this for a living, and I still hate editing my own audio. You sit there thinking, do I really sound like that?
We all do that. But for the learner, that cringe feeling is actually invaluable data. The roadmap says you need to record yourself and listen back for 3 specific things: pronunciation, grammar, and hesitations.
Hesitations. That's an interesting one to single out. Why highlight that?
It is huge for scoring. When you are speaking, you honestly don't realize how often you say, or just pause for 5 whole seconds to search for a basic word.
Right.
When you listen back to the recording, those silences sound like an eternity. You realize, wow, my flow is completely broken. You can only fix that cadence if you actually hear it.
So the source claims that fixing these small errors, the the basic tense slips, boosts scores surprisingly fast.
Yes, because you aren't trying to learn thousands of new words. You are just polishing what you already have. It is absolute low-hanging fruit.
Let's move to the written word. Pillar 6 is write short essays regularly. And this ties directly into Pillar 9, which is about grammar. There is a very strong warning in the roadmap here about complexity.
The complex sentence trap.
Yeah. I feel like students are taught from day one that big words equal big scores. Like, why use good when I can use exemplary? Or why say I think when I could say it is my considered opinion that...
And that mindset is exactly how you tank your IELTS score. The roadmap is very clear on this. Quality over quantity. And clear, correct sentences are vastly more important than overly complex ones.
Why is that, though? Wouldn't an examiner be super impressed by a 40-word sentence with 3 subclauses?
Only if it is absolutely flawless. If you attempt a massive, complex structure and you mess up the grammar halfway through, you are penalized heavily.
Right.
But if you write 2 simple, perfectly accurate sentences, you are safe. The roadmap suggests focusing heavily on connectors words like however, therefore, although. These are the glue. They show logical thinking without requiring you to write like a 19th century novelist.
So it's about architectural integrity. The structure needs to hold up. A solid, simple shed is better than a collapsing mansion.
Exactly. And this ties right into Pillar 5, build vocabulary smartly. The roadmap explicitly warns against just memorizing massive lists of random words.
Which is exactly what we all did in high school. The stack of flashcards with 0 context.
And it absolutely doesn't work. The roadmap advocates for contextual vocabulary and specifically collocations.
Collocations. Unpack that term for us.
It's a fancy linguistic term for words that like to hang out together. For example, you don't just do a crime, you commit a crime.
Right.
You don't make a decision, you reach a decision. If you memorize the word decision but don't know the verb that naturally goes with it, you're stuck when you actually try to use it in a sentence. The source says, write the new word in a sentence immediately. Use it in your shower conversation.
Lock it in right away.
Yes.
Okay, so we have the strategy, the input, the output, the grammar. We're doing the work. But the roadmap has one final pillar, Pillar 10, and this acts as a sort of safety net for all the others. Review and reflect.
This is the meta layer. It distinguishes merely doing from actually improving.
It suggests asking 2 fundamental questions after every single study session. What went wrong? And how can I improve next time?
It sounds incredibly simple, but it forces active learning. Let's say you did a reading practice and you ran out of time. If you just close the book and walk away, you learned nothing. You just practice failing.
Wow, yeah.
But if you sit there and ask, what went wrong? You might realize, oh, I spent 5 whole minutes reading the first paragraph.
Right.
Then you ask, how can I improve? Next time, I will force myself to move on after 2 minutes. Boom, now you have a strategy.
It turns a failure into a workable data point.
Exactly. The roadmap calls this the fastest way to progress. It physically stops you from making the exact same mistake 100 times in a row.
So looking at this whole holistic picture, these 10 pillars, it really challenges the entire idea of cramming, that you can't cram reflection, you can't cram muscle memory.
No, you can't. You can cram facts. You can cram history dates or chemical formulas for a test tomorrow. You cannot cram a skill. Speaking a language is much more like playing tennis than it is like taking a history test. You need the neural pathways to be physically developed over time. If you don't practice swinging the racket for a week, the weeds grow back over the path.
I want to circle back to the listener right now who might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. We've thrown a lot at them today. 10 pillars. Active listening. Recording themselves. Where do they actually start? If someone only has 30 minutes a day, what does the roadmap suggest is the highest leverage activity?
Based on the heavy emphasis in the source material, I'd say the absolute highest leverage is combining input and output in the exact same session.
Okay.
Listen to a short 5-minute clip doing that active listening we talked about, focusing on intonation and pace, and then immediately spend 5 minutes summarizing what you just heard out loud to yourself.
So you're hitting listening, speaking, and structural grammar all at once.
Exactly. And then you reflect on how that went. That one exercise hits 4 or 5 pillars in 10 minutes.
That is super efficient. And it validates the whole start small advice.
Yeah, it does. The roadmap essentially gives you permission to be a beginner. It explicitly says, start with short paragraphs, start with slow audio. You don't need to be perfect today. You just need to be consistent today.
And you need to be willing to be a little uncomfortable. I think that's my biggest personal takeaway from this deep dive. The talking to yourself, the recording yourself, and listening back, those are deeply uncomfortable things.
They are, but there's a core concept in learning theory that growth only happens at the very edge of discomfort.
Yeah.
If you are totally comfortable, you are just reviewing what you already know. When you record yourself and you cringe at your own accent or you get frustrated because you can't find the right word, that frustration is literally your brain recognizing the gap. That discomfort is the exact moment of learning.
So embrace the cringe.
Embrace the cringe. Seek it out. That's where the points are hidden.
I love that. So to recap for everyone listening, let's run through these roadmap pillars one last time. 1, know the terrain. Don't let the format surprise you. 2, don't just hear, listen actively. 3, talk to yourself. It's not crazy, it's strategic. 4, read widely but hunt for information.
Right. 5, learn words in context. Collocations are key. 6, write simply and clearly. 7, use the official maps, the real test papers. 8, record the cringe and listen to your mistakes. 9, remember that grammar is about clarity, not complexity. And 10, always ask what went wrong.
That is the roadmap. It's a continuous loop, not a straight line.
And it beats hoping for a lucky break on test day every single time.
Every time. Listen, if you're prepping for the IELTS or, frankly, just trying to polish your English skills in general, try that 1-minute rule today. Just talk to yourself for 60 seconds while you make a coffee. See what happens.
It rewires you.
It does. And think about this. What if the very thing that makes you want to quit, like hearing your own voice make a grammatical mistake, is actually the exact biological mechanism that proves you are getting better? Discomfort isn't a sign of failure. It is just the feeling of learning.
That's a great way to look at it.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.